you first meet each other?
That's pretty easy. I was 17 years old and all my friends were dating and I wasn't. So I was crying the blues to my girlfriend and she got a blind date arranged with her boyfriend, and he is Nelson's third cousin. And so we had an arranged blind date and stayed together for 2 years and got married, and now it's 50 more.
What was your first impression of Nelson and then Alma?
I'll go first on that one. With this arranged blind date, I was at my girlfriend Pat's house, and we were telling each other crazy things throughout the day. They were telling me he's going to have buck teeth and he's going to drive his daddy's car, and trying to make it sound as bad as possible. So I didn't know what to expect, but I looked out the window and he was driving a Chevelle. So it's like, well, it can't be all bad. And he got out and it's like, oh, okay. And his uncle was Luke Wenger that had time meter instrument. And I knew Luke and always adored him as a Sunday school teacher. So he looked enough like his uncle that I thought he would pass. I don't know what to expect out of this.
I didn't know what to expect. I had no pictures. Didn't know what. All I knew was no. But I was pleasantly surprised.
Tell us what you thought when you first met each other's families.
Well, that's pretty easy for me. I mean, they were down to earth people like us, so we just fit right in. They were a farm family, turkeys instead of cows, but they were rural people, and
yeah, and it was kind of exciting for me that there were more siblings in the family, because I was used to just one brother, and so being with a family that had more children. It did take me a little bit of time to adjust to Grandpa though, because he was such a joker, and there were times that he would say things that I didn't know if I should be offended or if he was just joking.
When did you decide that he or she was the person you would probably marry?
she decided the first date.
The funny part of that is that I had a course in home ec that we were to plan a wedding, and we had a whole booklet that we were supposed to make. And so our teacher said, if you're dating someone and you want to use real people, you can. And so I planned everything out with his family and our family, and I even set the date. That was just a few weeks after we started dating.
And we stuck to that date, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you decided he didn't.
Kind of.
Yeah.
At least at that point.
Tell us about your proposal and engagement.
It just sort of evolved.
Yeah, it evolved.
There wasn't an actual proposal as such.
No, I don't think so.
We just kind of knew.
Yeah. It was going to happen.
Engagement was a time where we were figuring out that we were going to be able to start farming. And I just remember I had visited his mom, who was in the hospital for a short procedure. And when I saw her, she said, now that's a lot of responsibility to farm. And it was kind of almost offensive at that point, because we were 19 and 20. We can handle the world.
Where was the wedding and reception held?
Well, that's easy.
Our wedding was at East Chestnut Street Mennonite Church in Lancaster City, where I attended as a girl. The reception was at Bird and Hand Restaurant, which is still in operation today. It kind of goes back to my home ec assignment.
So when was
Well, our first date was January 23rd, 1971, which a couple of years later ended up being Dean's birthday. But my assignment was sometime February or March, and so I figured most people date about 2 years, so I picked January. It's a memory. I'm not sure it's a favorite, but we had the unity candle, and we practiced in the evening before, and someone decided that they were going to snuff out the candle by pinching it with their fingers, and they broke the wick. Therefore, in the wedding, we're both trying to light this candle and it wouldn't work. And the bishop is there cutting and trying to carve this thing with his knife to get us to be able to light our candle, which I don't know if it ever did burn then for us or not.
I don't think we actually got it. I think after the ceremony or whatever, they got it going, but I don't think during the ceremony we actually did ever get it lit.
And I had a song that was playing during that time that I really wanted everybody to hear. Nobody heard a word of the song because they were all watching me back there cutting away at our candle.
Where did you go on your honeymoon?
Florida, the monkey jungle.
Why
And
did
Para
you
Jungle.
choose that place?
And Disney.
Say it a little bit louder.
Why did you choose that place?
Because that's what everybody did.
It was in the winter time, so we headed south.
Why did you do that?
Yeah.
Where did you live after you got married in 1973?
Well, we lived at her parents' house till April 5th, or around the 1st of April of that same year. So it would have been from the time we came home from our honeymoon, which would have been in the beginning of February sometime. Would have been about 6-7 weeks. We lived with her parents, and then we moved to Penryn from the farm there at the beginning of April. I think it was April 5th. And we're there 5 years, and then we were at Earhart Road for longer than that, and we're now on Colebrook Road on 11 years.
What do you remember about your first year of marriage?
I had to learn how to be a dairy farm wife. I didn't come from cows, so that was a different concept. And I had a father-in-law who thought that the stereotypical farm woman should be up at the crack of dawn. But that wasn't quite my style. It still isn't.
Which pregnancy was the easiest and which one was the most difficult?
I'll let her answer that.
Well, he had to live with me for all of them, so I don't know. He may think they're all the most difficult. As far as I got mild morning sickness with everybody, so I wouldn't say that the pregnancies were really that much different. Deliveries, Dean's was long, and I was in the hospital, and of course he had to milk the cows before the baby was born. We went in at night. He milked the next morning and the next evening, and hurriedly came in just as it was time for Dean to be born. And then for Eric, we called to the hospital, to the doctor, and they were waiting for us. Why aren't you coming in? But he had to milk the cows before we could go in and have this baby. And I'd say Neil's was a fairly quick and easier delivery. I remember being in the barn, pacing back and forth while he was still milking the cows. And then Troy's was kind of some fun memories. It was hot summertime, and things were a little more modern by that point. And we were in a room, and it was really warm, and I was just really hot. And the nurse said to him, "You could get the fan for her." And he's looking around for an electric fan, but instead it was one of these kind.
What are your best memories of farming?
One thing I think of at Penryn, we were unloading corn off of a bin wagon, and a bin wagon is sloped, and I was up on the high side and he was down the side where the corn comes out, and the wagon body came loose from the running gear and flipped over, and I slid on the pile of corn with my legs sticking out, and the wagon came down upside down on top of my leg and landed on my leg, and he was outside the whole time, so he was able to get over there and lift the weight of that wagon off of my leg, which he'd never be able to do, but the adrenaline was working.
Yeah.
Next day he was rather sore.
Yeah. Next day, all I reach up to plug the milkers in. It had to be 600-700 pounds.
I still have a mark of my leg to this day where it left an indentation.
Well, in the early 80s, we had the top herd in the county one year, and that was rewarding. We were in the alfalfa contest, and we did pretty well in that. I don't think we ever won it, but we were up pretty well.
We had some hard times when our cows got sick with yonis.
Yeah, that was probably one of the most
I
discouraging
think it was
times.
your 37th birthday that we sent a truckload of 15 cows to the butcher shop because they all had yonis. That was a tough day for him.
It was 88, whatever.
36.
36.
Yeah. You don't know what yonis is. It's what
Cows get diarrhea and they eat normally, but the food they can't digest and get the nutrients from it like they should. And so they get real skinny, and eventually they just have to go to the butcher shop.
How many different dresses have you had in 50 years of marriage?
Oh my.
Well, it was
We've-
RD2.
When I was at home, we were RD2 box 77. We moved to Penryn, we were RD3. Do you remember the box?
369.
369. And then they rerouted Mannheim. Then they changed us to RD5.
125.
And then we moved back to Earhart Road. And then we were RD6. And
And then they went by roads.
then we were
Became
690 Earhart
690
Road.
Earhart Road.
But the RD2 and the RD6 and the 690 Earhart Road were all the same place.
So we have a question from the grandchildren. What is RD?
Rural delivery.
Rural delivery, yeah.
It was before all of the roads had actual names.
Yeah.
Yes.
They just had routes, rural delivery.
What is the best decision you ever made as a couple?
Best decision ever made.
I have 4 kids and all you grandkids. We didn't decide about the grandkids, but
What would you say was the most difficult period of your marriage and why?
One of the most stressful times, I guess I would say, well, not necessarily marriage, but when we realized that when Grandpa Wenger, my grandpa, your great-great-grandpa died, that we would have to
This is now.
move or,
No.
or find a place. And we looked at other counties and ended up being at Earhart Road. But that was a stressful time to decide what to do. If we would have loved to stay at Penryn, at the Penryn farm, but I was only 25 years old. We weren't ready to buy, and it would have needed major remodeling as far as the facilities because they were outdated. So it just wasn't feasible at our age to do that.
in hindsight it would have worked. But looking ahead, we didn't know that it would work. I think I'd want to probably stop time like in the upper 30s when all the boys were still, they were pretty well grown and independent, yet still around and close to home.
What is your favorite place to go on a date together?
Sunday evening drives.
Yeah, we often go Sunday evening, especially in summertime.
If you know what that means. Maybe some of you wonder what's a Sunday evening drive, but there's I don't know, in both of our families, maybe, or not. Not your family?
No, not
My
really.
family would often do that on a Sunday evening, just go drive. And I always found it an adventure to try and go find roads that I wasn't familiar with, because I knew a lot of roads in the county, and so sometimes it was fun to try and venture into an area that I didn't know as well.
I went to Niagara Falls.
Yeah. That was with all the boys. And that was, looking back on it, not a very safe thing to do, because we had the pickup truck and we put carpet in the back of the truck and everybody was in the back, no seat belts, no car seats, just loose in the back there with luggage. And there was a sliding window between the cab and the back with the cap on.
They had 2 sliding windows so you could go back and forth.
And so if people wanted to switch, they could crawl through that window to go forward or to the back.
Which year boys gave you, Grandma, the most gray hair? Share a story about it.
You're the right person to ask that question. Oh my, Neil and I had our headbutting sessions along the way. He thought I ought to do his homework for him or give him the answers, and I would try to lead him to the answers, but that's not what he wanted, so I pawned him off to Dad instead. Although we had a good time doing your senior year.
You made it through.
Which of your boys most frequently got yelled at by Dad? Tell us a story about it.
My dad, maybe you need to ask them.
Probably when the potato gun got our windows dirty.
Oh, that I don't remember.
We had just washed the windows in the front of the barn. There's windows that you crank open and they lay flat in the summertime, so they get really dirty. And you close them in the fall, you can't even see them, so you gotta wash them, and they're a pain to wash because they're all individual glasses and a piece of glass. And we had just washed them, and one of the boys, they had these potato guns, and they fired one off, and the potato landed on the freestall barn where the heifers were, and it scared the daylights out of them. They came running down in front of the barn. It was sloppy like now, and they had manure splatter all over the windows. We had just finished washing it.
I don't remember.
And I think Neil does.
Wasn't the pipe bomb when the dirt came down on the freestyle board?
I wasn't going to say anything.
That was a pipe?
It was black powder from Hefrick's gun shop.
Oh my.
So it was in a pipe, and we had buried it under the ground, had a fuse on it, and lit it, and then ran between the 2 concrete silos because we felt like we would be protected there. But of course, like you say, it knocked all the dirt up into the air. It came down the freestall barn, scared the heifers, and they ran down from the barn.
Oh my goodness.
So it wasn't a potato
It
gun.
wasn't a potato gun, it was a little more serious than that.
Tell me about a time that your son's making you proud.
There's a lot of times. Strawberries and winning prizes. Several of you did that. Dean with your green bean project, or what else did you have?
Miles of green beans.
Yeah, miles of green.
Let's see.
When they all got married.
There's so many more. I can't think of them off the top of my head though.
What advice would you give your grandchildren about school?
Maybe especially the ones who are
Yeah,
age where you got married. So.
I was going to say, we can't give advice. Some of them were older than what we were when we were dating. I think it's very important that you get the right life partner and don't settle for someone that's not the right person, because marriage is a long commitment and there's ups and downs, and yet commitment is so important. And that's what got us through a lot of times.
Yeah.
What is a bucket list item you would like to accomplish as a couple in your next season of life now that you have 50 years under your belt?
Well, one of those things on the bucket list was going to Switzerland, and that one happened earlier than what we expected that it would. Thank you, Eric. And we are so thankful that that did happen when it did because of the whole COVID changes since that. I guess part of the bucket list would be to eventually have you to a point where you're not milking cows every single day of the week.
What advice would you give your sons and daughters-in-law hope to get to 50 years of marriage?
You just don't walk away from it because you get tired of it. I mean, you're committed, and this is what you agreed to do. So, for better or for worse,
Yeah,
you do
we
it.
joke around about that sometimes. The for better and for worse. We joke with each other. This is the for worse part. And it seems when you're young and you're getting married, you say those vows, and yeah, it's what you're supposed to do. It's what you're supposed to say. But after you've been married for a while, you find out that there are better and there are worse times to be together. Picking the right person in the beginning and then just working together and being committed to each other, because after 50 years, things don't always go well. So it's important to be committed and have God as the center of your marriage.